Now we will proceed towards another national cultural variable, that is language. So we were discussing about all the other cultural variables, have discussed about education, laws and regulation, politics, religion and social norms. Now we are discussing about language. All important constraints that undergirds all the preceding variables like education, language, cultural, religion, or the important constraint is language. We all agree that knowing the language of your host country is the most significant contributor to improved communication on personal as well as on business level. As we know that in whatever country we are moving to, in whatever country we are living, we should know the language of the host country. That makes our communication, our business deals, our personal matters, and our personal communications, they all are made very easy with the know-how and command of the host country's language. So basically, we cannot have command on all the languages of the whole globe, but English is a world language, international language. So we should at least be having a command on English so that we can communicate with different cultures. English is a world language, and to make it extend, the language of business, so or official language. But you will do a better job overseas if you know at least basic vocabulary of the host country. And your informal contacts and your off-the-road visits and travels will take you places where they don't speak English. Even the host country, developed countries, they don't speak English, so you should know the basic cultural values as well as basic uh, vocabulary of that language. So these are all about national cultural variables. Now we will proceed to individual cultural variables. What are the individual cultural variables? Earlier, what we studied the macro level the national characteristics affecting communication. Now we are focusing on the individual characteristics affecting communication. Like in the on in the macro level, in which we studied in which studied the national cultural variables. Under each national cultural variable, there exists many people. There exists a whole population, and in all the individuals within same cultural pattern, they even differ with each other. They exhibit unique lifestyle and personal habits and ethnic diversity. So within each culture, there are individual cultural variables, and all people value their individual freedom. Often, this freedom is expressed as own ethnic is expressed as the person's own ethnic diversity. So the individual cultural variables are basically time, space, food, acceptable dress, manners, and decision making. So we will discuss each here in separately one by one. Time. Number one, time. Knowing cultural perceptions of time helps you understanding personal responses. Persons in Latin America and the Middle East treat time more casually than Americans, who prefer promptness. Germans are time precise. Rarely do you wait for an appointment in Germany. They are very specific on time. But in Latin America and in Buddhist cultures, you may wait an hour. Your host is not showing disrespect thereby. It means that in their culture, they have a tolerance for being late, but while communicating with Americans and Germans, you should be very specific on time. So, in some cultures, business people take afternoon naps, close shops, and postpone times for business meetings and dinner. So German law specifies definite opening and closing hours for business and dictates which evenings retail stores may be open. So they are very precise, time precise. So nobody have to wait. Everybody is clear about the timings. Then even when referring to seasons of a year, countries differ. Some speak of the rainy and some of the dry season. Americans in Europe think of spring, summer, fall, and winter. They take the names of the of the different weathers as spring, summer, fall, and winter. But briefly, in United States, think of the time as linear. Journeys begin, journeys end, the days begin, days end, season start, season stop. Others think of time as circular, all in good time. So for some cultures, it's precise enough. For example, one culture says, let's go on with it. The other culture says, tomorrow. Time goes, time saving devices, efficient devices. In how many minutes can you go get there? Other cultures say, what will be. Okay, they will be. Uh, let's, one culture says, let's set a phone appointment for 8:15. But other cultures also say, don't give a phone appointment time at 8:15, but they just say, we will give you a call. One culture says the future is now. The other culture says the old way is a good way. Okay. Some culture like, did you get my point? Like some culture says that the future is now. Like we have left our past values, and we whatever was happening was in past, and future is now. But few cultures, they prefer uh, their ancestors' way of doing and their traditions and etc. So they say that the old way is a good way. Some say live for today. Some traditions say, some say, the culture says traditions should be honored. Okay, few say live for today. So few say traditions should be honored. Then few say dinner at 8. So, and few cultures say see you when you get there. Okay, don't few are it means here few are specific and few are not specific. So, in addition to different concepts of time, other factors such as space, the restraints, lack of individual computers, and the electric current interruptions, and effect prompt communication. So, next is space. Uh, Before proceeding, let me check. Next is space. Uh, Space is also individual cultural variable. Space is called proxemics. Like it gives you an answer to the questions about the individual cultural variables, like how close may strangers stand to you. This is the space during communication. Uh, and what does it feel like when you are in a crowded elevator? And most Americans feel uncomfortable if a stranger comes closer than 18 inches to them. So, how did they react? How do you react in Saudi Arabia when someone's breath intentionally brushes you in conversation? And how do you like being literally pushed into a train in Tokyo? Japanese usually don't mind crowded places, and but we mind that, and Americans usually mind that. How do you react hanging on to the outside of a bus in India? Then how do you react to the cold stare of a German as your eye invade the privacy of his or her yard. So, uh, Germans, this is very common for them. This is their cultural difference. And in Saudi Arabia, they don't they are don't mind being closer in conversation, but Americans do mind. So Americans demand more room, more buffer space between themselves and the others men speaking. So, to some cultures, Arabs, Latin Americans, Americans, why do not stand close, seem cold and aloof? So, conversely, some cultures consider those who stand close to you as intrusive, rude, pushy, and overbearing. So, they are saying that they are targeting or they are affecting their comfort zone and their personal comfort and the comfort level distance. So while we conversing with the people, we should also know the individual differences, individual cultural variables in each culture. Overall they make a culture of nation, but they are individual differences. Okay, and we are talking about their um, general viewpoints and the feelings about the space while someone is communicating. Then is then is acceptable dress. So it is better to ask about the mode of dress for an occasion for your host country than to risk making an embarrassing mistake. What kind of dress is acceptable to their country? But if the case is different when you are representing your country's culture, then in host country you can be very much up to or 100% into according to your cultural dress. But if you are communicating for a business deal or if you are communicating on a personal level other than the cultural representation, then you should be according to the acceptable dress in the host country. In most American business, males wear the business suits, whereas women wear dresses or tailored suits. And in great measure, that uniform is common throughout the world. Even in Eastern Europe, it adopts more capitalistic methods. Some of our British friends might still wear the bowler along with a dark suit and carry an umbrella. In India, a Nehru jacket and a Singapore long sleeved shirt with a tie. But in the Middle East, long cotton coats are acceptable. In some situations, you may see the Hawaiian muumuu, the Polynesian sarong, the Japanese kimono, and the Iranian chador, or the hijab or scarf, or the more dark blue jackets and pants. So we will see different things in different cultures, but while for communicating and for effective communication, we have to overcome these barriers, and for being more effective communicator, we have to follow the dresses and the acceptable dress of the host. Then is food. It may be a good idea prior to visiting your host country to visit various ethnic restaurants in your home country. When then you will have an initial idea as to the kinds of foods available, how they are served, fixed, or eaten. So while when you are traveling to a host country, then you can visit because you cannot there before going there, so you can visit the restaurants available in your home country of the host country. Like we have restaurants available of the Turkish restaurants, Italian restaurants, Arabian restaurants. So before visiting the host country, we should visit their restaurants in our home country in order to know the types of food they serve and how they serve and how they eat. Like in Chinese, they They use the rather using forks and hand, they use chopsticks to eating noodles and etc. Then is then is manners. So some cultural anthropologists are people who study human, and some cultural anthropologists suggest that you observe children in foreign culture because by watching them you learn the behavioral habits of elders. And children shake your hand in the Germany, hug you in Italy, and often stays in the background in India. So, in fact, the ritual of the greeting and the farewell is more formal overseas with children and adults. So, you bring a gift when visiting most homes in Europe, and if you bring flowers, you avoid gifts of red roses in Germany or white in France, Belgium, and Japan. Opting the manners of country may mean 2 to 3 hours lunch in Europe is acceptable. If you can call up your patients, we prefer to sit closer together in Asia. 12 people at a rather small round table in Asia it is normally having dinners or meals, and eating with chopsticks is not unusual in China. So you should be familiar with eating with chopsticks in Asia, China, Thailand, etc. Then in Saudi Arabia, you will learn that sons defer to their fathers. That age is paramount. That a junior prince is silent when a senior enters. At the heart of their system is the family, the house of Saud. To know even these few cultural manners is to begin understanding this country in the Middle East. Then last is decision making. Americans are accused of being brusque. We wish to get the point fast. So, patience above all is needed in all cultural communication. In doing business with other countries, Americans are typecast as moving too quickly in asking for a decision, give more thought to inductive communication. So, Americans accused of being brusque, and getting down to business is a trait of our Western culture. The Germans, Singaporeans, Swiss, Dutch, and Scandinavians are similar, and they're quickly getting to the issue. In contrast, the Chinese, Italians, French, British prefer more leisure, social, and amenities while communication and while making business decisions. So when one reaches Japan, decision time is held back as group consensus moves towards a decision. And participation by many people is the touchstone in Japan. As you can imagine, much time is spent in reaching an answer or conclusion or decision. That is what frustrates Americans. That is where we throw up our hands. Unhappily, we do not try to understand that for the Japanese, the system of participative decision making words that here participative decision making, we take input from the lower level. We in organization, for example, organization, no, managers don't decide and just decide and implement all their decisions on the lower level management. Rather, in Japanese, they believe in participative decision making means that before making a decision or implementing policies, they take input from the people who have in turn finally or who ultimately have to work on them, rather than just decide and force them to follow. We should be involved in participative decision making as in Japan, and it takes time, which frustrates Americans. So, Japanese system of participative decision making was that the Rinki process, that stamps of approval by many people on a proposal. Like in Pakistan, we also use the Rinki process, that we have stamps of approval, that the approval or anything, any proposal, any letter, anything gets approved by different steps, one by one, and it It means that underlying agreement is obtained in advance of beginning an action in Asia. One of the authors of business communication, they visited, consulted, and entertained in an Asian country for 8 years before his host felt comfortable enough to offer assistance with some research projects. At the end of dinner, in the eighth year, a senior member declared, "We now know you." At the end of dinner, in the eighth year, he said that we now know you. We are ready to help with your research project. 8 years. 8 years to gain approvals of the project and interpersonal acceptance by the host. This patience and your understanding, this is too much, by the way, but it loses the essence of research in this such 8 years of time. But this patience and understanding of decision process add to your success in dealing with a foreign environment. So here these were all about the individual cultural differences, individual cultural variables, time, that is chronemics, space, proxemics, acceptable dress, food, manners, decision making, and decision making. So that's all about today's lectures. Any questions? The questions will be asked in the next class or at the end of this session or the live class. Here I want to summarize about today's lecture. It is difficult to assert that definite behaviors will consistently be used throughout a country by all persons. Time changes, culture changes, ethnic diversities change. Yet, consider the following maxims on intercultural communication. Number one, recognize that one's own country is a mixture of various ethnic groups. Understanding the diversity of one's own country is fundamental before looking abroad. First of all, you should understand the ethnic diversities and the cultural diversities in on your home country. Avoid drawing conclusions for an entire cultural group based on only a few examples, and avoid stereotyping. Stereotyping is when we conclude about some group characteristic on a whole on the basis of some individual or few examples of the people from that group. So understand that communication breaks down are more the result of misunderstanding in culture than grammatical or stylistic issues. Avoid judging others on the basis of your own culture. Each country has its long established traditions. The United States does not have monopoly on preferred business communication principles or procedures. With these four maxims on background, this chapter we discussed today, suggests that each culture in each ethnic group within a culture has generally accepted recognizable behavior. If most of the behavior is familiar to us, we are comfortable. If these are major differences, we feel uncomfortable. So time is needed to adapt to and understand another culture. Basic to another any country are certain national variables. Those mega principles that indirectly affect its population. Thus, we learn something about a country's culture by knowing the educational levels of the population, the legal and regulatory restraints affecting business, the economic philosophies or national and foreign trade practices, the political attitudes, the religion as practiced by the state or the individual, the social norms of the state, and the language. Each of these affect international communication. So, our effectiveness in communicating well and succeeding overseas requires adapting to many factors. Knowing even the polite forms of a foreign language is helpful, and is knowing some differences in writing and speaking. Do some research into various organizations and journals interested in international business and communication. So finally, you should ask questions in both personal and business areas, and then you are on the way to successful intercommunication, intercultural communication. So that's all about today's lecture. Hope you understood well about the global cultural context. If you can come up with questions in the next class, thank you.